Todd, you kind of said, let our mantra be just today, let me fully bloom. And you talked a lot about the mind in full bloom. What is that?
Well, I think if we use the analogy of the flower, it's when we're totally open to the present moment, to the work that we're doing, to the people that we're with. So, like I can remember many times in music, also in school, like I'd be at a party in college and someone's talking to me, and then I spot like a beautiful woman on the other side of the party, and all I'm thinking about is how can I get over there and get out of this conversation? And so that's a very closed mind, because that's still outside of here and now. Right here and now is something happening. I also experienced this in music. Kathy probably knows what I'm talking about, but when I'd come off stage, sometimes there would be like family member or relative, like 20 people back, and I'd like to get to them, but there's somebody right here. But then I realized like this person right here is like really here because of the music. Like they don't have to be there, they're not related to me or anything like that. They've been waiting like 2 years to see this song that like saved their life, you know, performed live. And I really ought to just open to, you know, to that moment. So really it's the mind in full bloom. What I mean by that is just an enlightened mind that is completely immersed in the present moment. And when we open ourselves up to who we're with, to what we're doing, mind and heart, then you know, miracles happen. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
So, hi. You talked about trees, which I love, and I liked the piece that you were talking about with the roots, that, you know, where there's so much water, they're very shallow and the tree's very easy to push over. And where there's very little water, the roots go deep, they're actively seeking it. And when you talked about that with the, you know, correlation to sadness and joy, and, you know, for me the waters took on tears, there were tears. And, you know, the fact that the roots are actively seeking that was just really profound for me. You know, it's like water is information, and every molecule of water carries everything from everywhere, because water permeates everywhere on the planet. And it makes up so much of the planet, it makes up so much of what we are, that it's, you know, it's it's magical stuff. And so, you know, so are our tears, and so is our sadness. And you're talking about being at this ashram and carrying these bricks in this heat. And the trick was not minding, not being in your mind, not letting your thoughts take you away. So all of a sudden, the idea of not minding took on a completely different notion. I love that. You know, don't mind. Heart.
I've heard stress as being here but wanting to be there.
Yeah.
So if we could let go of that,
Right.
yeah, even if what seems to be unpleasant in the present moment seems to be an obstacle, we can overcome that.
Right. When I have thoughts that go through my head, in a discipline that I work with, I learned to start asking, who does this belong to? Because nearly all of the thoughts in my head typically are not mine. They're my awareness of other things going on around me, even like in a 5-mile radius, and I'm picking up thoughts from all over the place. But as I learn to, like almost as a mantra, be asking who does this belong to, and feeling those go away because they're not mine, I go into a never mind, you know, kind of a state of being. And it's never mind. Again, not minding, and never mind. It's never mind.
Thanks for sharing that. And if you like the tree analogy, there's a blog on my website called A Metaphor for Maturity, and it goes deeper. Tree metaphor, like water in a lot of spiritual stories is a symbol for love. And so when water's not readily available, you have to work a little bit harder, or when you lose love, you feel crushed. But But if you work for it and you manifest it from within, then you have this like really firm foundation. Also think of losing love or getting a broken heart as like spices. Spices, before they're spices, are herbs and plants that are largely unnoticed. But once you crush them, then the value comes up and the flavor and the fragrance emerges. Thank you.
Todd, I have a question that maybe you could reconcile for me. So I was also struck, I mean, your talk made me think about 8 things, but the sadness-joy dichotomy makes good sense to me, and I know that, okay, I teach a very introductory level high school philosophy class, and we study some of these people, and like Heraclitus and the Neoplatonists and so forth, talk about the essential nature of that spectrum. We can't experience joy without experience sorrow, and you know, light is meaningless without darkness, and so forth. But I also, what at least on an intellectual level makes sense to me is the Stoics or the skeptics or the Buddhists that practice this detachment, you know, and not getting too high or too low, but just finding, you know, not getting carried away with the details and being, you know, I got, you know, a basket full of bricks on my head, great. So they seem different to me, you know, that everything's great or everything's fine, and then also we need the highs and lows. And I intellectually understand, but I find that I'm very human and I experience highs and lows even when I feel like I shouldn't.
But it's amazing to realize what our thoughts actually do to our bodies. They just seem like a private conversation going on, and it doesn't really matter. Like I can think anything, and as long as it's just in my mind and I don't act on anything, it's all well and good. But the minute you have a different kind of thought, all of one's energy changes. I do this experiment in the hospital with clients where I ask them to think of somebody that they love, but they haven't seen in a long time, and they're still alive and they have a good relationship with. So they'll say, okay, Jack. And I'll ask them to put their arm out and resist my pressure pulling it down, and I'll say, I want you to repeat after me and then think this thought, I would like to see Jack. And so they say it and they think it, and they're able to resist my pressure, and then we reset, do it again, and I say, now we're just going to change one word. I want you to repeat after me, say it, and then think it. I should see Jack. And when they say, I should see Jack, their arm just literally just falls by itself. We think it means the same thing. I should go see Jack. I should see Jack. I would like to see Jack. But apparently, the body has been totally transformed by just one word. Because should takes you way out of the present moment. Oh, I haven't seen Jack in ages, and you know, I really haven't been a good friend. And it invites guilt and pressure. I really should, which means I got to find time. I don't know if I have time. And it has this domino effect. So whenever we're using should, this is sort of like what the language of FOMO is. I should be doing that, or I should be here. You know, I'm meditating and I'm thinking I should be doing the laundry because I'm not going to close tomorrow. Then I'm doing laundry thinking I should really just be meditating. I'm watching Netflix, I should do the dishes because all the food's crusting over and it'll just be harder. And I'm doing the dishes. I shouldn't be doing the dishes. I didn't make this mess. And like this, it becomes a habit. And I think like what some of the philosophers, the great philosophers were talking about with like the yin-yang symbol, it's really amazing how Stoicism in the time of Greece was, I think, happening around the same time as some of the schools of Taoism in China. And they were both talking about this balance of the light and dark. Sadness, in terms of relationships, I think it's like ultimately we're alone. And we have to go back to being alone. We come into the world alone, we leave alone. And when you're in bed with somebody that you love, at some point, you will, even if you're in each other's arms, you will have to fall asleep and stop dreaming. You will have to go into deep sleep. And at that time, you're alone. There's no two of you there. There's just you. And then when you wake up, the play starts again. And it's amazing because you wake up with somebody you love in your arms. But you wouldn't say it was so miserable that I had to go into oneness for a while. And that's what sadness is. Although it doesn't happen in the course of a night, it's like it's spread out through longer periods of time. But your period of wandering in sadness is sort of like the deep sleep of being alone. And out of that, with the right attitude, you can emerge from that and then really love. And like really feel good about who's in your presence or who your arms can be around. So it's just harder to realize when it's longer spaces of time, but in the end it's all relative. Thank you.
Okay. How have you found in your business, in your philosophies, in your patients, the people who suffer from depression or addiction or just the whole mess of what that is? And if they can be taught, can you be taught joy? Can you be taught mindfulness that can help them? Does it help them overcome or at least manage those symptoms?
Yeah, the research is just thoroughly encouraging with mindfulness and meditation. Like I was mentioning earlier briefly, when you practice meditation on a daily basis for as little as 8 weeks, there are many visible, measurable changes in the brain that correspond to being happier. That precuneus region in the parietal lobe is one in particular. More cells will congregate there, and it will be easier to hold your attention on what matters. I mean, that's really the challenge, is being able to keep your attention on what matters. And that takes practice. It's a skill, but it can be cultivated because the brain is very malleable. It's called neuroplasticity. So that's what I teach, and I just launched a portal on my website, michaeltoddfink.com. It's called the Kind Mind Studio. So I have this podcast that you're familiar with, Kind Mind Podcast. Now there's an online studio where you can pick the meditations that seem to work for you. So there's a tree meditation based on what we were talking about today, and there's meditations in the body, there's body scans, and if you practice these and you gradually build up your practice to 20 minutes a day and you establish yourself in that routine, I promise that you will see the differences in a few months or so. You will notice that the things that you used to rely on to get validation, you don't need to. I mean, that's the real beautiful thing about this is, like, my sense of self could change no matter where I am. I'm in here today and people appreciate me, and then I go to dinner with my family and my family will see me as they've always seen me. And all of a sudden, maybe I feel small. They're telling me what to do. You still aren't married yet. When you're going to have children, you're running out of time. And all of a sudden now I don't feel so important anymore. But meditation helps you to have a stronger sense of self. Then it doesn't matter what people are saying. Why would it matter if somebody has the wrong idea of you? You have the right idea of you. So it's about really diving deeper into who we are, what we are, and when you realize that, then you don't need the external validation. And yes, it can be taught, and yes, anyone can benefit from it. It's just like exercise. Like, there are Olympic athletes, and there are in this world Olympic meditators who have lived in caves and their whole being radiates compassion, and I've seen them just take a step and it seems like, the trees start to bow down to them, and the butterflies and the flowers and the animals, like St. Francis. And it's same like that with exercise. We see in the Olympics and we see in football and stuff, people do amazing things. But that doesn't stop anyone from trying to exercise and get into better shape. So wherever you are, you can get into better shape. And why not make this the year when we get into the best mental shape of our life? And that's what I'm trying to help people with in these talks, and also with this new page on the website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And if you'd like to get into better mental shape, there is a sign-up sheet in the back.
It's an email sign-up, and I have some of the little booklets called Recipes for Wholeness for sale for $5 if anyone's interested. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it, everybody.
So what do you think? I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, or you can go ahead and sign up for our newsletter at speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com so we can keep the conversation going. Because Speakeasy is all about engaging in engaging conversations. I'm Maureen Muldoon, your spiritual vixen, reminding you to love more and fear less, and don't forget to laugh. What do you say?